Welcome to Negocios with BISILA BOKOKO or Business with BISILA BOKOKO. It doesn't matter if it's in English or in Spanish. And today I'm very happy to have here with me Brian Braginton-Smith, and we're going to speak about water, energy, climate change, and many things that it's essential and crucial in humanity right now. So thank you so much for being with us today, Brian.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Muy bueno, and gracias for the invitation. I'm honored to be here, particularly in light of what's going on around us these days, and regarding the urgency of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So you are a water energy specialist. What exactly that means?
Well, if you, I guess going back to the beginning, when I kind of made the pivot and focused on this path, what drove me, or what I envisioned was that the future was going to be constrained in energy and water, that we were going to be facing some severe crises, and that we were going to have to transition from, sort of the exploitive path, that linear consumption, use it and throw it away kind of a path, to something more holistic, more regenerative and renewable. And the two areas that I recognized as being the crisis elements were water and energy. And so that kind of started out as prime drivers, and they basically started out as two separate areas. Because water and electricity don't mix. I mean, that's not a good combination to mess around with. So I thought that it was something that were two parallel or different objectives. As we're entering sort of this transition point of the 21st century, which obviously we're 20 years late, but there's nothing new there. The reality is that the water and energy, if you look at our infrastructure and you look at our resources, are two of the most critical issues facing us today. And on the water side, we're running out of water on the one end, and we've had a very low regard for what we do with that water and what we do with it after we use it, which has resulted in multi-level crises that, again, as we kind of remarked earlier on, the point is that these events that are happening everywhere, and you're in New York and I'm on Cape Cod, so we just had the experience of experiencing Ida, and the front page news. So anyway, these things are cataclysmic in nature, and basically what they're saying is basically the same thing, that we need to be moving forward. We need to be moving forward on multiple fronts with equal vigor. And so, I mean, from a community standpoint, we've always done things from the perspective of what can we get away with, or what is the least that I need to do to meet the regulations, and that's kind of backwards. The real fact is that where we are today, we've got to look at what we can do and do what we can accomplish, because what we're going to leave is going to be what the folks that come after us are going to have to depend on. So instead of saying, I'm going to do this as cheap as I can get away with, we should be looking at how can we set things up for those who will follow to be able to have the highest level of quality of life and resiliency, because that's an important term today. But the bottom line is that it's not been something that we've been particularly concerned about up until now. But now, looking around, and whether you're talking about the signs in our oceans around us or in the atmosphere, it's startlingly clear and actually frightening in many ways because of the implications that that they carry. So yeah, but everything is interrelated. And that's kind of where things are going. We're going to need to be looking at things in a holistic way.
And talking about smart cities and smart communities, what is your role helping them when it comes to water energy?
Well, if you think about the smart community, smart city initiative, really what that is we are experiencing a new paradigm even as we speak. You know, this COVID thing that we're wrestling with right now. Well, it's been a real challenge, but it's been a real value too, because you know what we're doing right now. I mean, you know, if we rolled the camera back and this were, you know, 2010, which, you know, sounds a long time ago, but it's not really. You know, we would have had to have, you know, scheduled meetings, and then one of us or both of us would have had to travel to somewhere to do something like this. Or if you want to talk to somebody, you know, you got to, you know, schedule meetings, that sort of thing. We're now, we're kind of into this virtual reality. You know, and I'm a member of Rotary International, and as a matter of fact, I'm one of the members of their sustainability, biodiversity, and circular economy working group. They've just formed a new platform for action for their new $1.5 million members, and that is to take action to deal with climate change and trying to restore biodiversity. So it's a very exciting time, and that's kind of the direction that we're going in.
And what is your, I mean, tell us a little bit better about Ocean Energy Committee and the Ocean Pollution Committee.
Those were back, oh boy, a lifetime ago. I was working on a project called Ocean Ranch. And Ocean Ranch was I was working on wind energy because at that time, you know, back at the 1980s, mid 80s, wind energy was seen as the most viable of the renewable energy resources because silicon was based on silicon wafers, which were very expensive at the time, and nobody figured that they were going to be able to make the kinds of gains that they have. So that's what we were focused on. I started looking at the wind energy opportunities from a land-based perspective, you know, really serious winds here on Cape Cod. And what I found out was you start talking about putting these things up, and all of a sudden folks start, you know, sort of making noise about the fact that, you know, they don't want it in their backyard. So basically what I decided was they kind of chased me offshore. And I noticed a project that was going on over in Denmark called Vindeby, and it was the first offshore wind farm. And as I was looking at that, I was thinking, gee, that's kind of an interesting idea. I like the idea because you get it out on the water, you don't have to worry about the neighbors so much. But I was looking at it and said, you know, once again, you know, we're putting this concrete case on out there to support this turbine, and it becomes a foreign structure. It's you know, it's this basically sterile concrete block, and you stick it down on the ground. And I thought, well, geez, wouldn't it be neat if you kind of, you know, made nooks and crannies into that, because now all of a sudden, as the sea starts to accept the structure, you know, biofouling happens. That biofouling attracts other things, and before you know it, you've got an artificial reef which is teeming with life. You know, boy, that's a really great idea. Started trying to chase it, and anyway, that evolved into the idea of integrated open ocean aquaculture and open ocean renewable energy. And so I started pursuing that, ended up actually working with the Clinton administration and Jim Baker and Jim McVeigh from NOAA, trying to pursue it. And it was really kind of a bizarre world for me, because here I was, and I was up there at Lafayette Place with the President's Council on Sustainable Development. Al Gore was he was just coming out with his whole climate change thing, and at the White House level, and the director of the Department of Commerce. And they're all saying, "Oh boy, it's great stuff. We got to do this. This is just fabulous." Well, we'll get everybody behind you. We'll get things going. And as they started sort of working on it and trying to figure it out, we decided, well, somebody's got to be able to permit this, right? So they started looking at it, and what they realized was that there was no way to get there from here. I mean, because number one, there was no statute that established the regulatory authority, and even though once you get that done, if you don't have it funded through some kind of a mandate through Congress, then it just kind of dries up and dies away. So that ended up being what ended up happening. So it ended up with this whole sort of administrative, DOE wanted it, and then NOAA wanted it because that was the ocean and the fisheries and sustainable fisheries. Anyway, what ended up happening is you couldn't get there from here anyway. The folks from the CAFIN group and EMI got together with us, and we started moving in the direction, and then somehow it lost the aquaculture and was just a wind farm, and then that moved from where we were planning it over to Horseshoe Shoals, which is a really sensitive environmental area, and there where they were again, that those folks that didn't want it to happen. Well, obviously it didn't. But now that's almost 30 years ago. But now, Vineyard Wind is moving forward. And now if you look at it out, that resource, right down the coast, the east coast of the US and west coast, it's going great guns. I mean, thousands of megawatts are in planning. And by the way, SciTech, which is a Spanish company, has been moving forward with some of the first offshore floating platforms. That's a really cool concept. It's a really great team, and I support what they're doing. I think it's a brilliant move. But this is where things are going. It's an exciting regime, because hopefully if we do things right, then by making this transition, it's gonna help us to become more sustainable and to take some of the burden that we're placing off the ocean. That's kind of what that was. And at that time, there was this group called the Marine Technology Society. And as a result of hanging around down in Washington and being affiliated with these different agencies, they want you to be part of their group. So I joined it, and I was kind of listening to what they were doing, and I joined the Ocean Energy Committee, and they didn't have an ocean pollution committee, and I was kind of looking around thinking, boy, this is the Marine Technology Society. And so I brought it up, and they said, oh, well, we have the over here in our oil exploration and development group, there's an environmental group. So, is that what you're talking about? I said, no, I mean, the ocean environment, biodiversity, all that. So anyway, I ended up forming it. And then once things got a little bit too intense with the regulatory thing, and realizing, there is no light at the end of the tunnel with this, that we kind of had to pivot, and so that kind of brought us back to the land-based stuff, and that's where this whole smart community, smart city initiative sort of came from. And while that was going on offshore, onshore, I was working on water and wastewater. And looking at it as an alternative resource, and in fact, we installed some of the first membrane separation technology, and we were able to create, facilities, buildings, schools and other things that recycle the water. And this is really kind of remarkable, to be honest with you, because let's take an office building, and we did a number of them. Usually, if they were constrained, then that was the reason that they did it. But you can take a 10,000 square foot office building, just for grins and giggles, and let's say that normally, you fill it with your people and you're doing your work and all that sort of stuff, and after they leave at the end of the day, you look at it and you say, well, geez, we generated 10,000 gallons of wastewater, that came out. So that's your load, right? That's your environmental footprint. That's the burden you're putting on the ecosystem. Well, when you do this membrane stuff, it ends up being able to extract the water so that the water is reused. Mm-hmm. Well, instead of it being, it reduces the amount of water that you use by about 90%. So if you think about this, and you think about this from a standpoint of the crisis that we're in, this is a no-brainer. I mean, the first one I put in was 1990. So this is not something that is some miracle thing that's just come about. This is something that's proven, and actually it's kind of everybody. It is the most accepted advanced technology for advanced tertiary wastewater, but. Wonderful. All you got to do is take it to that next step and saying, well, geez, instead of throwing it away, why don't I reuse it? And now all of a sudden, if you look at this and you start doing this in a community sense, you can do all kinds of stuff. And so now all of a sudden, if you look at that, okay, so we're looking at the community, right? And we're saying, okay, what have we been doing versus what could we do? And you look at what have we been doing, and in two of the most populous countries in the world today, there is no infrastructure from a standpoint of wastewater. And India and China, and in many areas of the developing world. So we've got a big challenge. And that doesn't mean that the developed countries are free, because the United States right now, if you were to analyze the infrastructure here in New York, I mean, look at what's going on, right? I mean, you get a D, and it's not because we don't have it. It's because when we built it, things were really different, and it's not really relevant anymore. So we've got to deal with this whole infrastructure redevelopment. That's really where this whole sort of smart city, smart community comes in, because as we're doing that, now, the same technology that we're able to use in order for me to be able to talk to you, in spite of the fact that I'm sitting here in my cave and you're sitting there in your office, it gives you the ability to be able to, instead of me sitting here talking to you, I'm a sensor, okay? I'm a sensor on a motor in a pumping station for that one of those facilities. So I'm sitting here, and when I'm on and things are happening, I'm sending information out, and I've got a little ID, and my ID, that data that's going out is going into Wi-Fi or a cellular link, and your router figures out that, oh, that's a little pump over here that goes over there, and that data comes in. So now, if I am connecting all of these things, now in a normal world, we react to things only after there is a crisis. And so we're always playing catch up. And, we're always trying to dig our way out of the hole. So by doing this with the smart technology and the ability to be able to utilize this connectivity, which is critical to our modern life anyway, we're able to do things in real time. And it's not just the idea of being able to have these specialized applications, the infrastructure, things that we wouldn't normally think of as being methodologies that we can use in order to be able to know what's going on in real time. Streetlights, streetlights. There are streetlights now that are available that are solar powered. You don't even have to wire them to the electric grid. And they are equipped with 5G Wi-Fi, which gives you the ability to then not only have communications, but also have the ability to be able to deploy sensors. Now, by deploying sensors, you can do stuff like sensors for CO2, sensors for ozone, for health reasons, sensors for smoke. So that you can be able to tell if there's a fire nearby or something like that. All kinds of interesting stuff. But what that does is it gives you a higher degree of situational awareness. For instance, you can set them up where they've got sensors that will tell them that their feet are wet. So that, if there's a flood, you know that there's a flood and you know how high the water is, without actually having to put people in harm's way to be able to figure it out. So you start looking at this. And then you start looking at what we were talking about earlier with that, use as much as you want and just dump it. That mentality is no longer valid. So by having all of this stuff and this Internet of Things, and then you plug in analytics and the ability to be able to do machine learning, so that now the computers are watching what's going on, and if something sort of blips out of the norm, it recognizes it, and either it's got corrective software that's able to adapt, or it notifies you that something's up. So now instead of having people that are out there, sort of hunting and gathering, trying to figure out if something's wrong, you only have to go there when you need to go there. And then with real-time sensors, and this is something we've been having a real blast with in the ocean and stuff, is that you can set up sensor networks in the natural environment. So now, wow, you're able to sort of know really what's going on out there, and be able to deal with it effectively. So the way that I see things right now is, whether you're talking about renewable energy and the transition from fossil fuels, which is inevitable, or whether you're talking about, sort of this new reality of our ocean domains and looking at that from a standpoint of, regenerative, renewable resource opportunities. I think that we're in an interesting time, because the disruptive forces that are all around, and the magnitude of that disruption would indicate to me that a significant shift is happening. And you look at this technology that I'm describing, and again, the stuff that I'm talking about is not science fiction. I mean,
it's happening now.
It's happening now.
Yeah.
And there's the fun part, is that, and this is something important for everybody anywhere to recognize, is that we are experiencing a paradigm shift. That's the term normally used to sort of define it.
I love that, and because I love that, and I would like to wrap up with that, because of course I have a time frame in the show, but the paradigm shift for me is really what it's the key point that you are explaining right now.
Yes, and now the real exciting thing, and I don't care whether you're right now in a grass hut in the middle of undeveloped Africa, or you're sitting here in an urbanized dwelling. The bottom line is that this opportunity is a new opportunity. When you have a new opportunity, all of a sudden the old rules fall away. So that let's say, for instance, you really have a passion for this, and this is something that you really want to seek. Well, in the normal world, you could do that, but once you get through your learning curve, you're going to run into the wall of the fact that that is already an existing pyramid.
Beautiful.
Where there is no pyramid now, this is something that is evolving before our eyes. So if you identify things that are relevant now, that are cutting edge, that you can see will become, you know, sort of the base of our pyramid, get in there, and you know, you can go to the top real fast because, you know, you can start something. To me, this is one of the most exciting times ever to be alive. Because we can communicate like this. So and it's global, it's instantaneous. You know, the only thing that I have a problem with is time zones now.
Definitely. And I have a time zone situation right now.
Yep.
That's why I have to let you go. But Brian, I would love to continue the conversation in another time. I think that the message that you gave to the new generations is also very big, that there is opportunities out there. There is challenges, but also very much opportunities. And thank you, because you give us a very thorough explanation about what's going on with climate change, with how are the resources of energy that we could use. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure indeed. As I said, muchas gracias for the invitation. And it was a delight to be able to chat with you. And I thank you for what you're doing, because, you know, the opportunity needs people to happen. And all of us have the potential to really add to the overall solution here. So it's just an exciting time, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.